Everybody, and would you all rise, please, and we'll salute the flags. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
But this time, I'd like to ask, we have a lot of people here. We'd like to have public comment. If you'd like to address the board, the rules are that we do not respond back. This is for your chance to speak to the board. It's not a debate format. It's not meant for dialogue, but if you have comments about some action that the board's about to take or thinking about taking, or you would like them to take, or something that they've done, please feel free to raise your hand. Please state your name loudly for the record, and I'd ask you come a little closer because we're recorded off our owl here, and have your name and address, and then say what you have to say. I'd ask, because we have so many, that you keep your, we have a long agenda this evening, that you keep your comments to about 3 minutes. Some of you are already on the agenda for this evening, so if you're already on the agenda, please don't use this time to speak. Thank you very much. Who would like to be first? Judy? Would someone like to speak to the board this evening?
I came here to learn and see what's going on. That's what I.
Absolutely. Is there anything else anybody would like to add about any issues?
Great.
That's a hint to move on.
It's better than giving a shot.
At this time, I'd like to take as one motion the minutes of September 6th and September 20th. I will take, starting with September 6th, though. Is there any additions or corrections from the board?
I'll move the adoption of the minutes as presented.
Can you hold on to see if there are any additions or corrections? Please.
Sure.
Thank you. I suspect.
Which one it was on.
It was Bob DiPietro.
Bob DiPietro, hi there. In a moment, sir, we'll come back to that. Bob DiPietro, do you have any deletions or corrections or additions? Okay.
No.
Mr. Aramita, do you have any additions or corrections?
Nope.
So one of the nice, anytime.
5 of
The regular one.
September 6th. 8B. That paragraph isn't complete. I don't know what it was meant to say.
The fire department?
Yeah.
The fire,
Thank you for blank. I assume it's thank you for the work, but to Mr. Aramita, but
that's what it was supposed to have been.
Got it. All right, so noted. And I'll move adoption of the minutes with the correction.
Any other comments?
I didn't get a second yet.
Bob DiPietro, did you second?
I
Yep.
have another one.
Oh, you have a
Hey,
second.
you bet, I'm quick, Adam. You gotta keep going.
We haven't voted on it yet. Please continue.
Page 6. Item 10I. We should note that that vote and motion did not take place during executive session. It took place after the executive session, as it could not have taken place during it.
So that should,
It
so,
should be moved to after the words executive session ended. 10:08.
Right.
And it should state that I move the Board of Selectmen authorize the acting town administrator.
does everyone understand the word in the highlighted area where instead of the word approve, it say authorize, and then it would be moved down below the highlighted area that says executive session ended 10:08 p.m. Is that clear for everybody?
It is, and I'll amend my motion to
Yes.
make that correction.
Anything else? Very good, then, no other comments? I hear no other comments. All in favor, please say aye. Passes unanimously. So we'll go now to appointments and resignations. The appointments before us are for the Water Pollution Control Authority. We have Mr. Robert Mora for renewal, Mr. Richard Hayes for renewal, and Mr. Jim Rupert for renewal. And I would take that as one motion. Could I ask not Mr. Moore to make this motion since this is his position?
We should probably we should probably clarify that I'm an alternate.
And please note that Mr. Rupert is an alt.
Mr. Hayes is willing to serve.
Yes.
We checked.
Adam, you want to make the motion?
I move that that the board appoint Mr. Mora and Mr. Hayes to regular positions on the Bolton Lakes Water Pollution Control Authority, and Mr. Rupert as an alternate to the same authority, 4 terms to begin. What are they, 4-year terms, Bob?
Oh, yeah.
4-year terms.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Mike Aramita. Are there any questions from Bob DiPietro or Mike Aramita?
No.
Very good then.
Really exciting meetings, you guys.
Yeah.
I'm about to do a commercial. I'm about to do a commercial. I need you to say something like about that. So at this time, I call the roll. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
It passes unanimously. Number 4 under appointments is that there is a vacancy on the Water Pollution Control Authority.
If you're interested, please contact me.
They're nail biters.
Or me. It's exciting. We meet 4 times a year.
And how long do the meetings usually last?
Depends.
Are there-
It could be 30 minutes. It could be 2.5,
Depends on how much-
Is it?
if we have a hearing.
There are many jokes that can be made about this. We are not going to entertain them from the chair. But you know what they are. So if you, this is a true ask. If there is someone you know and you would think that you think highly of that would like to serve their town, perhaps that lives in the Lake District, that would be wonderful. It's a fun thing. I'm not getting a nod over here. I'm trying really.
No,
hard.
just saying, it's.
Come on, I'm really trying
You only
hard
meet
here,
4
so-
times a year quarterly, but you deal with rather important issues.
And we need a non-Republican.
I believe that's correct.
We believe that's correct
Could
because
be
the other two,
unaffiliated, Democrat,
the Green Party,
Green Party. name it.
Independent Party.
And I was gonna raise my hand. Come on.
Now that you have it out, right?
Could you put him on mute, please? Thank you, Mr.
I
Fournier.
will say, in full disclosure, we do occasionally have special meetings when we have some business to discuss. But those are usually very quick meetings because it's usually just 1 or 2 items. And we could really use the help because we often struggle to get a quorum.
So I'll leave it at that. Thank you all very much. I expect to hear from one of you, or so that you know someone.
If you change my mind, I'm available.
You're gonna change your party? Could you mute him? I'm kidding. At this point, I would accept a motion to accept Mr. Ernest Richardson as a Veterans Commission alternate. Thank you. Could I have a second? Bob DiPietro seconds. Thank you very much. He is offered to serve as an alternate. If other any discussion, he is a neighbor, was in the service and is retired. Any other questions? All in favor, then say aye.
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 Aye, we have it unanimous. At this time, we move on to number 6, which is CAPA, which stands for.
Capital acquisitions. Come on, help me, Bob.
Basically, What it is, it's a group made up from the Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance.
And Board of
and
Ed,
Board of Ed.
Right.
To put together the capital budget. So all concerned parties have representative on that. And then put together a package to bring before the Board of Selectmen. The Board of Selectmen then puts it together and sends it forward.
We also have a member at large, and we have had the very kind offer one more year of Mr. Carl Price, lifelong resident in town and former first selectman and then first selectman years ago, before some of you were born. I would take a motion at this time to accept the Kappa grouping of the first selectman, a selectman in the past, which has been Bob Moore. Are you willing to serve again?
And Carl Price has
Carl Price, and
as
then
a member at large.
member at large. All in favor, say aye. Unless Adam wanted to volunteer. Oh, this is the labor of love. This is one of those things, as I think some of our former selectmen will agree, it's a labor of love. Then all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Alan seconded it.
Do I have a second?
I'll second. There's no second.
Thank you, Mike. All right. Any other comments? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. We have the great news that our tax collector has completed a course and been certified as completed the course for certified Connecticut municipal official. And she achieved that in September 2022. So I'd like to say congratulations to Lori. Is there there's no action that's needed?
no action. We just, when people make achievements like this, we like to recognize it.
If they, many small courses that you have to put together to have this come about. And it's under the CCM Connecticut Council of Municipalities. Moving on then to number 5, reports and updates.
Suggest that we defer that until after number 6. After number 6.
Would you like to move number 6 up? Is that what you're asking? Do I have consensus on do I need a motion, do I?
I'm sorry, but I could not hear your.
I'm sorry. I was suggesting I'll make the motion. We move item 6 to before number 5.
I'll second it.
Since I think most of the people here are for.
Sure.
I have a motion on the table. It's been seconded. If there's no other comment, I will call for a roll to move number 6 up to before 5 at this time. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Very good. Could I have those that are interested in speaking this evening on the State Library Archaeological Dig the Heritage Farm get ready to say something? But I would like this time to ask the board to look down at number 12, because it's under the correspondence. Both of these pieces of correspondence are in relation to the topic of number 6 that we're about to talk about.
And there was also a late one we sent out supplementally.
Right.
So-
Would it be helpful to just people's memory about what this is about, and if somebody would like to speak in favor of it or about it, to describe it briefly? I know we asked you to do that once before, but she seems to be willing to do it from the nod of the head.
Mrs. Pitsley, would you like to come forward and address it from the State Library?
Yes, I apologize, Dr. Sportman and Kathy.
Please give the stand at the end, and then you can get on camera, you think?
Yeah.
There you go.
Dr. Sportman and Kathy Labadia from the State Historic Preservation Office were supposed to be here. They are driving up from Essex, so hopefully they'll make it. In the meantime, I'm Christine Pitsley from the Connecticut State Library, and I'm the project director for the Digging into History program. Digging into History is an experiential education program that we ran in 2019. We brought 15 Connecticut high school students to France to restore World War I trenches that had housed Connecticut soldiers. And this year, or I'm sorry, next summer, we are looking to bring those French students here with another group of 15 Connecticut high school students to explore the French Army's role in Connecticut during the American Revolution. So we have proposed to the board, Bolton, out of all of the sites we've looked at, Bolton was the site that really struck me because it's accessible, it's a beautiful spot, and it's a great place to encourage public participation in our program. While we can't invite everyone to come out into the archaeological excavation that we're doing, you know, we've talked to all sorts of people at the Bolton Heritage Farm about last week about ways that we can engage the community in this program. Our students will be here for 2 weeks. They'll be doing a small excavation, you know, 20 by 20, about the size of the stage, under the direction of the Connecticut State archaeologists. It is an archaeological preserve, so we'll be talking a lot about the penalties that go along with unauthorized digging over there. Kathy, and I think she mentioned it in her letter, Kathy Labadia from the State Historic Preservation Office is going to help us get signs, additional signage for the preserve, as well as she said there's grants that they can help get cameras installed if that's something that the town wants to do, and all sorts of other things to help protect the site. And that's one of the things we'll do, and getting the community involved in this. You guys become stakeholders, and the folks who live in Bolton that might not really be familiar with what the site is can get engaged, and that actually helps protect the site even more, because suddenly it's not just this piece of land, it's something that people feel engaged with. And if somebody sees somebody out there illegally, they're more likely, if they're engaged, to call someone. So we would like to get the Board of Selectmen's permission to have this excavation and be part of the community next summer.
So she's looking for action for this evening.
Yes.
At this time, I would say thank you, and when the others come, if you would like to add some more things, please feel free to be comfortable. Yep. Nice job. Thank you.
Can we comment?
I beg your pardon, you.
I said, can we comment? Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
Did you miss?
I just wanna know, do you need like a vote?
No, not from the audience, but it will be yes, a vote from the board. Do you want to ask Christine questions, or would you like to hear from the others first? and come back?
I was just wanted to comment because I was one of the few who had some serious questions the last meeting. And so I figured now's a good time to kind of explain. What I asked last time was, I thought this was a pretty significant move, and I felt we just needed some time to get additional comment in. And during this 30 some odd days, I did not get a single negative comment. So, which actually makes me feel a bit more comfortable in what's going forward. Also, the additional material gets sent, which I had a chance to really look over, and your explanation summarized it pretty well. That in essence, I feel comfortable with the controls that you planned there. So as far as I'm concerned, I think this proposal, we can safely go forward with it. And so I personally, I don't have any further objections to it. Just make that clear.
Would the Farm Commission like to address the board? Any member of the Farm Commission, Ms. Beth?
Beth Harding, 176 Bolton Center Road, and Vice Chair of the Farm Commission. We did send a letter, which I know Jim circulated to you, so I won't take your time to read it, but what excites us is it gives us an opportunity to further define the archaeological nature of the farm, which has always been seen more as a restriction rather than an opportunity. This presents an opportunity for us as a commission, but also for the community to learn more about what's there. And I think the program that Christine's group has put together will benefit the community in many ways. There are some community-wide events. We're going to bring students here who are going to now be exposed to the beauty of the farm, be exposed to the beauty of New England, give us an opportunity to showcase our town in even a bigger way and showcase the farm. And Christine's group has offered to help us look for some money opportunities to do some of the things that we've always wanted to do, like get a display case where we could have temperature control of artifacts that are found there and potentially get the artifacts that were found many years ago to be put there on display for the community and the public. So these are positives in our view. And we just are in full support of the effort and look forward to working with Christine and local curriculum director at the Bolton schools and the state to try and make this as broad and support of the program as
DePietro?
I don't know if this is a question for Beth, Arlene, or Jim, but
You have to speak up as best you can.
is somebody going to coordinate publicity?
Is someone going to coordinate publicity? Christine, do you want to address that?
Do you want me to come back up or?
I think if you speak loudly from where you are. Thank you.
We will work with the town and with the farm commission to coordinate publicity. We will also work with the W3R, which is the national sort of 501(c)(3) arm of the National Park Service, as well as the National Park Service and the Connecticut Council for Social Studies. So we're going to have lots of publicity, and with the America 250 Commission here in Connecticut ramping up, we'll also have them as a publicity arm, and Jesse Leavenworth with the Hartford Current, who is the Manchester Beat reporter, loves this project and did a whole bunch of stories on it in 2019. But he'll be all over this. So,
Thank you. Bob, were you able to hear her?
Yes.
Do you have a follow-up question?
No, good.
Very good. Adam?
I have two just quick comments. One is that I was at the farm event a week or so ago when Spitzley had a tent with information about this project, and I personally saw at least 2 or 3 families come up, speak to her, and then say, "Wow, that's really great. I can't wait to," that kind of response. Very, very supportive, and and I was as well. So I think that there's a lot to be said for this project, and I'd love to see it go forward. At our last meeting, there was a concern expressed by Ms. Marion about the possibility that this might encourage people to go and sort of prospect on the site and dig up things on their own illegally. And she mentioned that she'd seen a couple of people do that. And while I always take very seriously anything Gwen Marion says, in this particular instance, I think an artifact that's been identified, photographed, cataloged, and placed in a safe place is a lot more secure than an artifact that's in the ground waiting for somebody to get it. And so I don't see how this will impair that concern very much at all, if at all. Sure, it might raise the visibility of the site, but I think the people in the know, after all the years that the Historical Society and others have publicized this site as how important it is to this nation's history, the people who collect those things already know what's there.
Yeah.
And they've probably been there in the middle of the night, to try to look for things. So well, there aren't cameras there now. Maybe there will be if we get grant money, but I'm not sure whether that's something the town wants to pursue. But at some point when the farm has achieved its full use and full vision, there may be enough buildings and activity there that cameras would be appropriate and would be useful. So we may pursue that in the future. But for now, I'm very much in favor of this project going forward. I think it's a wonderful opportunity for a small group of students to understand their role, not only in history, but in the world, because of the connection with France. And anything that supports that, in my mind, is a good thing, right?
So we still have others to hear from the audience. Is anyone on the Farm Commission that would like to speak? You're speaking on behalf of the Farm Commission. Thank you. And for the lease, we have the farm is leased. And we have our farmer tenants here this evening. Is there something you would like to address this evening on this particular project?
No, thanks. So we're in favor of it. We're moving in a good forward direction.
Well, we're honored that you came this evening and appreciate your support and coming out on 2 different evenings for this. The Historical Society is here as well. The president of the Historical Society, Mr. Toomey, would you like to address this?
Be better over here, I guess.
It's just
Where I can
camera,
see- I can see
and you
now.
can see who's on, you can see who's on the camera as well.
I'm John Toomey. I live at 45 Hebron Road. I'm the son of the American Revolution and old town historian. This is one of the happiest things I have seen in the 22 years that we have owned my cousin's house. It has been a wonderful experience, and now the Heritage Farm Commission has done the yeoman's work. And I know that when I was with the Preservation Connecticut, we went through a lot of different grants that I helped preserve the barn foundation, the roof, other things that money went into to preserve that 100-year-old barn. I think it's great that the state library has come up with a wonderful plan to dig into history, and we have such a national treasure here. And I've said it before. It's a great place for people to come and see our history. One of the disadvantages that the farm has, and it's a positive disadvantage, unlike Valley Forge or Ticonderoga, no one died here, which kind of almost brings it out of people's sight. And after 22 years, I think we really need to. The assurances of what Christine from the library has said, that they're going to provide cameras to prevent theft, I think is such great insurance for us. And those artifacts need to be found and dug up and saved, along with what has already been dug up in the past. Thanks.
We don't normally hear from the audience on a board matter. This is a matter on the agenda, and we have the appropriate party speaking, but we have 2 people from the audience, one on camera and one not on camera, who wish to, and I would, at this time, with the board's approval, allow them to ask a question, a single question, if you have one. Judy, would you like to ask a question?
Yes, I would. I belong to.
Would you just say your address and
Sure. I'm Judy Birchow, I live in town.
what street?
Town Road.
Oh, I thought you said town of Bolton. Oh, your back was to me. I'm sorry. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay. I belong to the Bolton Regional Alliance, and my husband's treasurer, and I'm wondering if I should bring it up to the club to get a donation for this. Can you guys do a donation?
Would you please talk to Christine after? And there's a,
It's not, yes.
so at this point, please connect with
Okay,
Ms.
welcome.
Pitsley and in the black sweater. Mr. Fournier, do you have a question?
Yes, I do. Is there some other place that they could do this dig in lieu of Bolton and come up with the same results?
Thank you. Christine, would you like to address that?
I'm actually gonna.
Oh,
have,
hi.
Claudia, who is the state historic from the State Historic Preservation Office and an archaeologist. If you don't mind, I'll have her address that question.
Miss Kathy, thank you very much for coming. Miss Kathy, please.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't do
Your
it.
That's
timing is
okay.
I'm glad you got it.
Perfect time.
And if there's any other questions I can answer.
Would you spell your last
Happy
name
to.
for the
Yep.
clerk?
So Catherine Labadia, Labadia, and I am the staff archaeologist at the State Historic Preservation Office. And my office actually runs the Archaeology Preserve program. And so in terms of thinking about other locations, because this Bolton, as much as I love Bolton, as much as I love the site, it actually was not the first choice. But we were greatly constricted in what the options were, because with the students, transportation is a big issue.
So we had to identify, and we knew we wanted to do something that was Rochambeau related to our students. We had to pick a Rochambeau campsite that was easily accessible, safe for the students, that there's good accessibility to it, that we could find housing that was nearby, and that was still close enough to other amenities to experience Connecticut American life when they're here. So we had explored a couple other locations, and I will be honest with you, there were some people in Bolton who prior to COVID were being arranged, really threw up their hands and said, we would love to have you in Bolton. And one of the other options fell through for various reasons. And so, you know, I kind of like to think that life brings you to where you need to be. And so here we are at Bolton again. So I think the long answer is we explored a bunch of other alternatives, but it looks like Bolton is probably the best option.
Then I will ask the follow-up question. Do you have this proposal out in front of anyone else? Or are we one?
Right now, it is only.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm just gonna ask one. I know you submitted maps last time, but just roughly the location of where that, could you just take a moment just to?
Yeah, so the actual archaeology preserve covers about 13 acres. And so while we recognize that this is an opportunity to have students here engaged in archaeology, we are also cognizant of this is a fragile resource. There's a handful of these sites. The intention is to work with the Office of State Archaeology and actually do a couple things. One of them is going to help us better manage the site in the future. That's going to be going over the entire area, doing a metal detecting survey, just to pin flag areas where we know there are artifacts. The goal is not to then go and excavate the concentrations of artifacts, but to actually know where they are and to find areas that are adjacent to them that would be appropriate for opening up for excavation. This is not going to be an extensive program. It's maybe 1 week, 2 weeks, and you know, I had talked with Christine. If the town of Bolton wanted to do a town of Bolton big day, or you know, Bolton Historical Society volunteers, the French students are here for 7 days. Certainly, if we wanted to do, you know, 10 business days, the extra days could be filled with, you know, Bolton citizens, because I think that's only appropriate to, you know, give back since you'll be the host. So the exact locations have not yet been picked,
Okay.
and we are hoping.
So,
That was
you
a
all-
very long answer. I'm
So,
sorry.
no, but it'd be based off of your initial survey.
Yes, yes.
Okay, thank you. Can I have a follow-up?
Let me add one question to that part.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Is that so that's the ground penetrating radar that,
So that would actually, so the
Hi.
first thing we're gonna do is a metal detector survey, because that equipment it can go fast, it's inexpensive, it'll be very easy to do. And a lot of the equipment we anticipate would be associated with this campsite would be metal, so we should be able to identify those pretty.
so you're
easily.
looking at campsite specific, not house specific.
Exactly.
So on the bank where they encamped is where you are believed to be of interest to you.
Yes, correct.
So that's still within the 13 acres,
That is,
or
yes.
are you looking to look at other areas to be able to extend the 13 acres?
No, that is
as
within
possible?
the 13 acres, but we will do it, you know, kind of buffer it out. And I think that is just to
What
make,
does that mean?
you know, go a little bit beyond what
Okay.
we think the boundaries of the campsite are. And that is mostly because we don't know for sure. There's not been a tremendous amount of work out there. So this will help better manage what the boundaries of where we think the artifacts are.
And will it be your office that will do the recording and of the first part
So it won't
and
be,
the second part?
it will not be my office. It will be the Office of State Archaeology. So we manage it as a preserve, but we work. with
What's
the
your title again then?
I know, it's very confusing. There's a lot of archaeologists within the state. I'm the staff archaeologist at the State Historic Preservation Office.
At SHPO.
That's my role. I'm also the Deputy State Historic Preservation Officer. That's another hat I wear within the Historic Preservation Office. Yeah.
Thank you for letting me ask the question.
But the Office of State Archaeology is separate and they are located at Utica. And it is an office that does not have any support staff, so we frequently work together, especially
Discussion with the state as to why they got these two pieces working. But anyway, that's another discussion.
that is a discussion.
But thank you for that clarification. Bob, do you follow-up question?
Yeah.
Bob Moore?
Yeah, going back to your flaggings and all that. Obviously, they're gonna be pulled eventually, so
Yes.
do you have a satellite identification? How do you identify so that you have a map and there's not markings out there?
No, that's a great question. The markings will only be there very temporarily, so as you're moving around and you find it, you mark it, and then somebody immediately follows up with a highly accurate GPS system. And that
Okay.
will now create a permanent map for the town. If you wanted to incorporate it into your GIS system or anything else, that is for you to help manage the.
Thank you. I thought that's what it was, but I thought we should make it clear.
Yes.
Thank you.
no problem.
Board members, more questions? Adam, do you have one? Bob DiPietro, do you have a question?
No,
Mr. Aramita shaking his head no?
Nope.
And the Farm Commission is satisfied with what they have heard? Nothing new? And the Historical Society is content with what they've heard as well? Mr. Rupert, do you have a question?
No,
All right. And are you, if you have a question, sir?
I'm Richard Tree.
Do you have a question? Because this is not for an interchange, this is just for questioning. It's not a public hearing, this is a board meeting. And this is the second meeting we've had on this.
I recollect your comrade, Bob Mora, placing the request to hear from more people in the town at the August. At the last meeting in September. That's why I'm here. Now I got here at 2 minutes after 7. Did I miss public comment?
Yes, sir. Well, let me ask the board, I'll just take a quick poll with the board. Would it be all right if Mr. Treat addresses the board?
No problem.
All right, then we'd like to open this up for Mr. Treat.
I certainly appreciate this. And I would encourage.
2 minutes, Mr. Treat.
They hear Mr. Mora, because it's democracy at its best.
Mr. Treat, we have 2 minutes, 3 minutes for you because we have a very long agenda, just for you to keep organized
Thank
your
you
thoughts.
very much. Thank you all very much for letting me go, and I'm sorry I missed public commentary. This is a wonder site. It's pivotal. It's a pivotal component of the history of Bolton, of the history of Connecticut, and of the history of the United States. I want us to do very best we can by this property. And I think this is a good project, but I cannot support it unless there is a written agreement between the town of Bolton and whatever entity is at the core of this task to make it clear that artifacts found are artifacts that should remain in Bolton. And that's because this is the real place where it happened. These are artifacts that arrived here at that time. They should stay here with a history that always will be here. So this is a wonderful opportunity, but I would not go forward. I will not be happy unless there is an agreement that will protect the artifacts. And I don't want any things about inadequate storage and so on. That becomes an issue later on. I believe there are people who would make donations to allow for good storage to exist. And John, I hope you are remembering that we have artifacts in Connecticut that haven't come back. Arlene and Beth remember the same thing. I don't want this to happen again. But this is a wonderful opportunity, but I ask you not to support it unless this caveat that I have mentioned is executed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. For people's background, Mr. Treat is a lifelong resident of Bolton. and he is a founding member of the Bolton Land Trust, so his interest in the town preservation is very large. So I would like to address what he has just spoken on and ask for some commentary. John, Toomey and Beth Harney, you were singled out in that particular comment about artifacts that were taken by the state and not returned to the town, or was it artifacts that were taken at the time when the land was held in private hands and belongs to the private citizen who owned the land at the time? John, would you like to address that?
Hi, I'm John Toomey, President of Historical Society, and a founding member of that and the Bolton Land Trust. The reason that George Rose found things over the years, his son Richard Rose found those things over the years. Bolton has no climate control when these delicate archaeological finds. Maybe, Richard, we can work and try to get so that we have a town hall with proper ventilation and proper air conditioning to preserve things, so we haven't have a museum. But until that happens, I don't think we have any way to save these things. I'm sure there's a, I would leave that to the expert opinion of an archaeologist, but that's why the Roses sent everything to UConn, because we couldn't.
Is it Yukon or is it past?
It's with past, but past has it at UConn.
Yeah, if the
Yeah.
Dodd Center right now is. Which is within.
Is that something that if the town, this is because I know this is a little bit longer reach, the town could ask for them back if they have the appropriate facility to house them?
Answer to this. I am exceptionally mindful of the fact that when we move something from the ground, we're destabilized. And so I've actually talked to Christine. Our office is going to put together a grant to get funding so that anything that comes out of the ground goes through the curation process of stabilizing those artifacts, so that they will not be as impacted by minor fluctuations of climate. So you could actually keep them in a space that doesn't have the curational facilities of an archival location. Because we do want to stabilize them. Bolton has been a great partner, and I would like to see this project go through, but I also am very thoughtful about giving something back to Bolton. So we have already talked about, as a state archaeological preserve by statute, the artifacts go to the Office of State Archaeology and Dodd Center and its archival facility. We have already started an agreement document that will give those artifacts back to the town of Bolton if or when they are prepared to receive that. I see absolutely no reason why we couldn't go back to other artifacts. And this is where I'm going to take my only caution is I don't know how well stabilized those previous artifacts are, and I do think I wouldn't be doing my responsibility to just turn them over without first looking at them and knowing if they can ensure they're here for the next generation or the generation after. So I would just say, let's go through that and do that, and let's do this process. And there is funding available to the town so that we could do that. But I am sure there's also a portion of artifacts where it's not going to matter.
And it was my understanding that when the Roses dug these things up, it's been probably close to 25, 30 years, 40 years, that they found these artifacts on the farm. They had been whiz past at UConn this entire time. And there was one Bolton Heritage Day that we actually had them bring things for a day or two in special cases, right about here. Back in the early mid 2000s, they were here once. But they are delicate, they're fragile, and anything they find is going to be just as fragile because now they're 20, 30 years older in the ground. But if they can be stabilized, like you said, and then if we could ever get something to preserve anything here, it's sad that we can't, but it's more important that they be found and displayed someplace.
The board, Thank
Anybody have any
you.
questions?
Thank you, John. Board members have another question for John?
Thank you.
Bob Moore?
No, not for John,
Yeah, okay.
but did I hear you correctly in when you stated that there would be, if the town were interested in creating a location, that there would be funds to assist the town in providing a proper environmental area for it?
Yeah, you don't necessarily have to build a display. You could have something as small as a display case.
That's what I was, yeah, right.
Exactly. So what the State Historic Preservation Office has grants for municipality. I believe Bolton is a certified local government, so a lot of our grants are non-matching. And I'm happy to talk to the town at any other point in time. I don't know if this is the forum, but about what some of those opportunities.
Thank you.
Any further questions for Mrs. Harney? Would you have any comment you'd like to make? Any other further questions from the board? Then at this time, if the board is willing, I would accept a motion that includes wording about a caveat regarding the artifacts found, and that we would be looking for the appropriate documentation. I'm sorry, I apologize. Jim, did you have a question? for me?
No, I'm good.
My apologies. Is there someone who'd like to make that motion, Adam?
Well, rather than having me try and make a motion that has to be changed, I'd rather just have
There's method to our madness.
Let me just look at. All right, Matt. Madam Chair, I move that the board, number one, grant permission to the Digging into History program to conduct an archaeological dig heritage farms. That we direct the town administrator to coordinate with both the tenant and the Digging into History program for the specific conditions at the site to make sure that the tenants use of the site is accommodated by the dig, and that the town enter into an agreement with the state archaeologist and the State Historic Preservation Office as to the ultimate disposition and curation of the items removed from the site, with the eye toward returning them to the town of Bolton when a suitable place and display for them can be managed.
Second.
Adam, when you say with an eye towards, would you describe that for me?
Or maybe just the intention.
With intention?
Intention. Yes.
When a suitable site.
Yvonne, is that clear for you?
Again,
Very good, thank you. Our recording secretary. Very good. Adam, are you've got a motion and we
I
have a
second
second by Bob Mora. At this time, I'll entertain any other questions from the board. Bob DiPietro?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I could be looking at something, not any real idea what I'm looking at. I like the idea of preserving ownership of Bolton, but I would prefer personally to have a program where a couple times a year, somebody like John or somebody from the preservationist office speak to the group, to us, about what those artifacts really are.
So there is a request for whichever state office is appropriate at the time, and maybe both, or if not three, apparently, to give a presentation on what is found and their significance shards of pottery have a very different significance than to a belt buckle or a coin or some other important instrument that the French had.
Correct.
Is
You
that
got it.
help? That's good,
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Very good. Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. Any last comments by the board? At this time, I will ask for a roll call. All in favor of Adam's motion and seconded by Marmora, please say aye.
All right.
Aye.
And we have a unanimous vote. Congratulations. We'll address that at a future time. I would like to have that conversation. Mr. Toomey, thank you very much. At this time, I would like to say thank you very much. Those of you, I know you're here for, it's a long evening for you. If you'd like to stay, please do. You're more than welcome to hear the rest of the meeting. Hey, you know, I just saw Paula back there. We didn't wrap her. No, we didn't.
No, if you don't-
I tried.
no, if you like, please go ahead. I mean, don't worry about.
Please feel free.
Thank you, everybody.
Hey, thank you for coming. See you, Les. Why don't we take this time a 3-minute break? Would you pause the recording? And we'll be right back. The show will continue.
They're in my thing.
Did you see that? Was that a miracle? The board is coming. I'd like to ask the board to please, the audience, please come back to order. At this time, we are moving on to 5A for Diversity Commission update. And before us, they have presented their summary and analysis of the survey that was done. At this time, I would like to ask Amanda Gordon to please step forward if you'd like to address the board before with any opening comments.
Oh, I have no opening comments. I'll just start with my presentation. So if you guys had things you wanted to say before my presentation.
No, if you could summarize what you, because of the late hour, that would be grand. And thank you.
Oh, instead of doing the presentation?
How long is the presentation?
It's only 6 slides, right?
Yeah, I
pretty
will
short.
go as quick as possible, but I'm
Yeah.
trying to give everybody a good idea.
Oh, thank you.
It's
That's
pretty, pretty short.
straightforward.
So you'll have to bring up that slide. All right, so thank you for having me here after about a year since the two of us first met in November of 2021. So my name is Amanda Gordon. I am the chair of the inaugural Bolton Diversity Commission, which was approved in January of 2021. If you could advance the slide, I think just hit the freaking right button might work. The right key. Like the right arrow. There we go.
All right, that works.
Thanks. So we were created in January of 2021 by the then board because the town may not fully be aware of issues related to diversity and inclusion that may arise within Bolton. And the Board of Selectmen were recognizing that the town could do more to address some of these issues of diversity and inclusion in town. So we could have up to 15 members. We ended up with 9 members. It is a multi-partisan group. We are a diverse board, men, women, straight, gay, black, white, you name it, the diversity is there. So that was great to have the group. We did have Republicans, independents, as well as Democrats on the group. Next slide. So just to give you a little bit of background, the commission met and decided that we can speak to all of the issues that might exist in Bolton. So we needed to do a broader assessment of the town members to see what issues may exist, if any. And so we decided to do 2 surveys. I will say that this presentation is only on the adult survey, not on the youth survey. We only got 46 responses to the youth survey. We are still looking to do a smaller analysis of that, but this survey is, or this presentation is solely about the adult survey that was created. So we created a survey by looking at existing surveys that already existed, no reason to recreate the wheel. So we looked at about 5 different surveys that were used in other municipalities around the country and kind of tweaked some of the questions from that to end up with the final survey that some of you may have responded to that went out. So we do recognize that there are limitations to the survey. One being self-selection bias, which means that people had to opt in to take the survey. It wasn't a required survey. So that means that people who responded to the survey either wanted to or had some reason why they chose to do so. And then in analyzing the survey, we realized that some subpopulations that were analyzed weren't asked in all the questions, particularly around same-sex marriages, households with same-sex marriages. And so also those without secondary education, those who had English as a second language, and those with lower incomes didn't have questions targeted to them. Not all of the questions were targeted to them. So that limited our analysis a little bit. As many of you may know, it was distributed in hard copy at the Town Hall, Library, and Senior Center. And then most people responded to online versions that were shared through the Bolton Bulletin, but as well on many of the Bolton social media pages. Next slide, please. So we got 182 responses based on the 2020 census. That is about 4.1% of the adult population in Bolton. Another limitation of the survey was that some populations were overrepresented in our survey respondents. So that includes those that were 35 to 44-year-olds. They make up 16% of the town, but were 30% of the survey respondents. 18 to 24-year-olds were underrepresented in the survey respondents, they make up 13% of the town, but only 2% of survey respondents. Only 5% of survey respondents had no secondary education, while 28% of the town fall into that category. And then in terms of disability, they make up 10% of the overall town, but 16% of survey respondents identified as having a disability. I will also say that in terms of folks that are left leaning, 31% of registered voters are Democrats, and that's as of March of 2021. But 40% of survey respondents identified as liberal or far left, so a 9% difference there. Next slide, please. So this was one of the questions we asked. So this is one of the questions that was asked. We said, please choose a number on a scale based on how much diversity you personally feel Bolton should have, with 1 being much less diversity, 9 being much more, and 5 being you think Bolton's diversity level is perfect as it is. So the first chart displays the spread of responses. How many people responded with which numbers? So 43% of respondents said it's perfect the way it is, or 43 respondents said it's perfect the way it is. 50 said 9, 5 said 1 said 5, 5 said 1, sorry. Going backwards here. So that's the spread. You can see more people lean towards 5 and higher than 4 and below. So the second chart shows the average desired diversity level by subpopulation. So after we did the analysis and where they fell in comparison to the average. So the average score, as you can see, was 6.8. So I have to zoom in to see my subpopulation scores, but those who were white, non-Hispanic, household with low incomes, females, individuals with disabilities, non-current residents, minority sexual orientation, non-Christian religion, and left-leaning ideologies all kind of lean towards the higher level. Whereas those with moderate ideologies, who were male, those with non-post-secondary education, who were foreign-born, maybe had military participation, etc., they all fell lower than the average. But as you can see, only one group, those with right-leaning ideologies, tended to have a score that was lower than 5. So less diversity desired level. Everyone else said it was great where it is, or we should have a little bit more. So that's the summary of that slide. I'll put my notes back up. Okay. So this slide right here, all of the responses, it was a Likert scale. So you rated from poor, fair, good, excellent, or unknown. And they were weighted. So on a scale of 1 to 4, with poor being 1 and excellent being 4. And so an average score, we were able to obtain an average score for each question. Don't know responses were excluded.
You want me to go to the next
Oh,
slide?
yes, I'm sorry. Don't know responses were excluded from all the scores. So in addition to an average score, responses were also grouped into favorable and unfavorable pools. So if they said poor or fair, it was considered unfavorable. If they said good or excellent to a question, it was considered a favorable response. And so each question was assigned a favorability percentage, or the percentage of people that responded favorably to that question. So average scores and favorability percentages were determined for the overall respondent pool, as well as for each individual subpopulation. And so then we took the average of those averages for all of the questions to identify the scores that you see here. And what is being shown here is how each subpopulation's average rating deviates from the standard. So if you see the populations to the right that are in blue leaned more favorably and had more positive average ratings than the subpopulations on the left, which responded more negatively or less favorably towards most of the questions. So folks who were non-current residents, you see them all the way on the left, they were the most dissatisfied, had the least favorable ratings. Those with right-leaning ideology, you see them all the way to the right, they had the most favorable and the highest scores. And then you can see the folks in the middle. I'm not going to go over all of them for the purposes of time. So from a racial diversity perspective, Bolton's, so race only, we did look at diversity broadly, but from race only, Bolton's diversity index, which is the chance that 2 people chosen at random will be of a different race, is about 25% in 2020. That's up 13% from 2010, but still below the state diversity index of 56%. So while we don't define diversity by race alone, many may interpret the word diversity in this manner, and that could be, you know, some of why the scores were how they are, because we did not define for people responding to the survey what we, the committee, defined diversity as. Next slide. Findings. So actually, I'm going to have you skip. This is a summary of the findings, but I go into detail on the next 2 slides, so you can skip ahead to the next slide as well. So we, looking at both the quantitative analysis, which is the numbers, and the qualitative analysis, which is looking at all the narrative responses that were provided, we identified 7 different findings that we wanted to elevate. And from those findings, we then presented to the board, and I'll go over those later, some recommendations based on those findings. So the first finding is that respondents were torn about whether or not Bolton is welcoming. On the screen, you will see some samples of narrative responses that fell into these kind of findings or these categories or themes. I'm not going to read them to you, but I will summarize some other points. So 50% of respondents rated making all residents feel welcome and creating a community welcoming to residents of all backgrounds favorably. But some subgroups only had favorability percentages for these 2 questions as low as 20 or 30%. So this suggests that if Bolton is to truly be a town that is welcoming to all, there is a little bit of work to be done. The second finding is that some folks who responded to the survey felt that DEI efforts are unnecessary, that there's no need to change Bolton, and that diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts create division rather than solving issues that might exist. This group indicated that they believe the recent DEI efforts are promoting an ideology that something is wrong with Bolton, and that those who are proponents of such DEI efforts do not like Bolton. A third finding was that affordable and supportive affordable housing and affordability just broadly are really important to folks. So this was a theme that arose in both the quantitative and qualitative analysis. The argument is that the lack of affordable housing and or combined with the high cost of living in Bolton through things like high taxes, the need to own a car due to lack of public transportation, proximity to basic needs like food, jobs, and healthcare, as well as the type of housing stock, which is largely single family homes, and zoning laws, means that we're making Bolton inaccessible to a large portion of the population that's out there. And then a fourth finding is that the people wanted opportunities to interact and celebrate diversity. So there were questions that said, please rate, you know, does Bolton do a good job creating awareness of Bolton's diversity or offering gathering places for diverse groups to get together? And those had low favorability ratings, got lower average scores than some other questions. And there was a general consensus that in-person engagement would be better than social media. There were a lot of negative comments about social media. Next slide. So the fifth finding was that as it related to questions of personal experience, even if some of the subpopulations had scored things favorably in the other questions, when it came to their own personal experience, we saw that they rated things less favorably or more had lower scores. And so that included questions that asked, I can be my full authentic self in Bolton. I am likely to recommend living in Bolton to a family or friend who asks. I can raise issues about unfair treatment without fear of consequences. And I feel a sense of belonging in Bolton. And so those were the questions that we looked at. And if you look at the subpopulations that are on the screen, individuals who identified as BIPOC, which stands for Black, Indigenous, People of Color, those with disabilities, those who had a minority sexual orientation, those without post-secondary education, those with lower incomes below 50% of the AMI, and those who identified with non-Christian religions, all really scored low on these questions, even in some cases, especially among the BIPOC population, where they had scored higher in other questions. So that kind of leads us to believe that there may be something going on where even if they score the town favorably, that there is something innate and that makes them feel like they belong less or are less likely to recommend our town to others outside of the town. So it may be something that we want to look at. And then the sixth finding was that those with non-Christian religion scored rather unfavorably and negatively. Unfortunately, there wasn't much narrative comments on this, so we don't know why that may be. But we did see that they had favorability percentages below 10 and 30%, which was the lowest we saw throughout the whole survey. And their average rating was 0.76 less than the general respondent. And then 64% of those with non-Christian religion reported being discriminated against because of their religion. And then the last finding, which may be one of the most concerning for me, is the one that those with disabling conditions have been having negative experiences in the town of Bolton. And you can see the quotes there. I will make this presentation. We will be posting this presentation on the website, and all these quotes are also in the full report. But some of those quotes are really concerning. So more than half of respondents with a disability reported an experience of discrimination based on a disability in Bolton in the last 5 years. And they had more negative scores and lower favorability percentages as a theme. And there were many narrative comments focused on disabilities as well, which I did not expect to see when I looked at the data, but there it was. So that was our last finding. So basically, taking all these findings, these general themes that we were able to pull out of both the numbers and the narrative, we came up with some recommendations for the board. So that's on the next slide. So the first recommendation is that to solidify its commitment to being a town that is welcoming to all and to combat the negative messages that are circulated via social media, the commission recommends that the Board of Selectmen formally adopt a proclamation declaring a commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion as a community priority. The second recommendation is that in order to monitor progress towards improving Bolton's image as it relates to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and to elevate any emerging issues that may arise, as well as to assist in the implementation of the below recommendations, that we implement a formal and permanent Human Rights and Equity Commission. The third recommendation is formal training for all town employees, elected officials, and volunteers serving on a permanent town committee or commission. So training that is related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. It suggested that this be biannual training because that's when boards and members are elected and rotate on and off of the commissions. And that would allow people to have the skill set necessary to respond if discriminatory things happen or unacceptable behaviors or comments are made in public settings. It's a lifelong learning that we have to go through to know how to respond in those uncomfortable situations, but training can certainly help. The fourth recommendation is that the Board of Selectmen and the town make affordable housing a top priority. We already have an affordable housing plan that just came out. I strongly recommend that you do, but we need to make affordable housing a priority, and we need to monitor the recommendations in the plan and make sure that they happen moving forward. This may include the creation of a subcommittee or a commission dedicated to finding concrete ways to increase affordable housing in town. And apart from the DEI benefit that we would get by adding affordable housing, there's one salient comment that stood out to me, that without new developments and with an aging and declining tax base, it may become increasingly difficult to maintain current services and programs or establish new initiatives with this stagnant tax base and declining population. So we really need to be finding a way to bring more people in town so that we can continue to support the way of life we've come accustomed to in Bolton. The fifth suggestion is that we have to figure out what's going on with folks who have disabilities or folks with disabilities in their family. And so this may mean doing a full-scale accessibility assessment. Some people did talk about the accessibility of the buildings and not being able necessarily to enjoy all the public spaces the way other people could. So both a physical assessment as well as potentially a deep dive assessment into how the town is able to treat, including the school system in particular, our children with disabilities, specifically because that is a protected population and we are obligated to make sure that we are serving them and that they can partake in the equal enjoyment of physical spaces. And then the last recommendation of the commission is that we provide more opportunities for engagement between our townspeople more broadly. And this may just be because we've been in COVID for the last 3 years, right? And so we haven't had as much interaction in person as maybe we did prior to that. But these events could be focused on DEI, or they could be integrated into existing events where we might highlight a certain culture or a gender or a diverse population at an existing town event like, the farm day that just happened or our concerts in the summer. We might do a book club focused on diverse topics or diverse authors. That we might do facilitated dialogues, which would allow safe space for issues to be discussed and to allow them any issues to surface that might come up over time so that they can be addressed in real time instead of having to wait until the next survey that happens. And then when you meet and talk to each other and get to know your neighbors, it just helps build empathy between people, which is important when it comes to issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so the thought is that through open and regular dialogue, residents of Bolton can come to understand that by seeking to elevate and celebrate topics of diversity, equity, and inclusion, the goal is not to critique the town of Bolton, but rather to come together to make it the best it can be for everyone who currently lives here and those who may choose to live here in the future. So sorry that was really fast. I'm trying to get out as much detail as possible, as concisely as possible, because I know it's getting late. The report was posted in the materials for today's meeting. There is an executive summary for those who want an overview, or there's your 40-page report, which goes into detail. All of this will be posted on the town's website, as well as I'll be making the raw data available somehow in as small a format as I can get it so that people can dig in if they really want to. I do want to acknowledge that I have members of the commission here tonight. So Kwan Gordon and Paula Myers, John Toomey, and I believe Jennifer Sear was online with us. Hopefully she's still with us. And I know we're short on time, so I would turn to the Board of Selectmen to see how you would like to proceed in terms of questions, comments from yourselves or the public.
But this time, this is not really appropriate venue to have questions from the public because we didn't invite them in to do that, except for public comment at the very beginning, and they hadn't heard your presentation. It might be of interest the next board meeting. At public comment time, people will have seen the survey with the summary and the analysis online. They'll have time to digest it. And
can I provide some constructive feedback?
Yes, ma'am.
So at the beginning of the meeting, you said that if something was on the agenda later down, they were here to make a comment about it, they should wait until that part of the agenda came up. So that might have been confusing to people who were here to speak on this issue.
Thank you for the clarification. Is there anyone in your commission that you would like to have speak on any specific topic? That
Nope,
was
anybody is willing, if Jonathan wanted to say something. And
Sure. I'll join. I'm John Jones, I'm a member of the Bolton Diversity Commission. Honestly, in some ways, I'm just from a rich kid. But there's a few of you here in the room, there's at least 3 of you in the room here that knew my mom. My father remarried when I was 8. So my birth mother was born on a reservation to my grandparents, Francisco Rivas and Barbarita Sanchez Rivas. I never met my grandfather, but I do remember my father. Growing up that way, two different cultures. My father always made sure that my mother's past wasn't ignored. But growing up in town, there's been things that have been a little disconcerting and some things that have been very encouraging. My dear sweet Aunt Helen, the town clerk, welcomed Jim Rogers and his father-in-law into the Congregational Church. It was very rare to have a Black family come into town. That was, to me, very important. One of the other things about dear sweet Aunt Olive Toomey was that her daughter was always included in our family gatherings. Her wife, Nancy Fiano. And that I grew up with that. And that taught me that being gay was okay. And we've had people that were surveyed, and there's a lot of people in town that fit all of these racial and sexual orientation categories. Oh, I want to thank you for doing the survey. Having spent a quarter of a century in the Bureau of Labor Statistics. I'm glad I didn't have to train you. But I will say that, you know, there was good things that have happened in town, like Dr. Rogers. 55 years ago, some people in town decided to paint a new black family's house with paint, painted their doors, and I remember my father driving me to it and saying that's what the N-bombs deserve. So those are the things I grew up with too here. And there's a lot of other things that, you know, we always say that there's no gay people. 8% of my high school class is gay. Every place I've worked at, it's somewhere between 8 and 11%. There's a lot of people in town. Bob DePizza, this is actually in response to your question back in January when I was here with Carl Price. You want to know about the membership of the Diversity Commission. Sorry if I surprised you a little bit, but that's why I wanted to do this. I think we've covered a lot of ground, and pretty much it.
Thank you. Any other member of the commission that would like to address the board? Quan?
Quan, member of the commission, Diversity Commission. I believe the commission took the charge that was given to it with a lot of determination and stability amongst the group was second to none. It's very passionate for me. I'll share one instance I've had here in the town of Bolton. So we moved here in 2019, and one of the first interactions I had with a neighbor, who's now a good friend, was not ideal. I was looked at as being suspicious. I think through the prism of not belonging. That was one of the first interactions I had. I was simply walking my dog in my own neighborhood, just moved here. And it kind of reminded me that even having a graduate level degree, being successful in my terms of definitions of being successful, I'm not excluded, even in 2019, which to me is very relevant and current. There's opportunities to improve overall relations. Don't judge a book by the cover, judge it by its substance. Look at the content, look at the heart, look at what that person has to offer and what they have done. I think that is what defines good neighbor. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else on the commission that would like to address the board? Do we have anybody on? Jennifer, you're online, you're muted. Would you like to address the board? Hi there. Good
You
to
have
see
to
you.
unmute.
You're muted.
Can you unmute?
Hello. Kawan's comments made me tear up a little bit. It was a wonderful presentation by Amanda, and I'm just honored to be part of the commission and can't wait to see what we do moving forward.
Thank you, Jen. Appreciate it. At this time, I would like to start off with a comment, and I hope I reflect that of the board, that this is a very, very, very impressive presentation, a very high level caliber presentation done by volunteers with a leader who understood how to put it together. I'm presuming there's a lot of your fingerprints on this, having sat it through a number of the meetings that I was able to attend. and it's interesting. It's leaves a lot more, leaves many questions that come out, as many questions, if not that we thought we would come up with answers. Very interesting from the percentage amount of people that responded to what is diversity. You know, there's major questions that are in our head, but impressive statistical gathering. And we have only one piece of this. We do not have the youth piece yet. That is a whole second viewing of how the youth have addressed the survey that was specifically designed for young people. So at this point, I would like to ask the board if they would like to ask questions of the commission members that are here. If they have questions that they can answer, and to Amanda, or she can direct it to any other person in her group. And I would like to ask just one question, and I know this is very technical. Did you take a vote on this survey by your commission members? Did they approve it?
Yes. So there was a subcommittee who created it, and then we met together, I want to say 2 or 3 meetings to tweak it, and the final survey that was created was approved by the whole commission, as well as the report. We had 2 or 3 meetings where we ran over drafts of the report, and everybody read it and approved it before it came out. Yes.
Thank you. Adam, do you have questions you'd like to add?
I read the, well, first of all, I want to say to Amanda and the commission as a whole, to the extent that everyone I'm sure contributed to this report, I found it extremely important, informative, useful for my own thinking about this subject, which is a difficult subject for everyone. And I recognize that everyone comes to it with their own background. I am, and I remain disturbed by some of the things I read in the report about attitudes that are in town, about experiences that people have had in town. And it's sort of a wake-up call for us as a lovely town which perceives itself, and I think we all perceive ourselves as good people and as a great place to grow and raise children and live. And yet for not everybody in this town, that isn't always the experience. And for their children, it hasn't. And that, you know, hearing this from my own children and what they experienced or heard from other kids growing up about experiences that young people have had in town in particular disturbs me as an adult and as a responsible person in town who's held important, you know, who's held positions or volunteered. The idea that all of this goes on and that we just don't get it into our conscience and consciousness. If it's one person, it's too many. You know, 5,000 people live in this town. 4,990 might experience it as a wonderful place to grow up. But if 5 or 10 experience it as a difficult place to grow up because of their race or religion or their sexual orientation or anything else that's a characteristic that should not matter, that's our responsibility as adults and as responsible people here. So my question to the commission sort of is, do you see a way forward? I know that you're recommending a human rights commission or some kind of long-term body. Is there, I'm going to say this without criticizing anybody in town, but it is hard to get a group of people committed to long-term change or long-term improvement to put their shoulders to the wheel and make it happen in any small town in any part of this country. For some reason, we are not cohesive. We are not often willing to sit down as people of good faith to do something together to make the world better. It's hard to do that. It's hard in your busy life. It's hard in your economic circumstances. It's hard with your family to spare that time. And I would love to see that happen as a goal and as a plan and a project for this town, to have some entity that would take this on in the same way that, the farm commission takes on the farm and the PTA takes on the schools. With that kind of energy and goodwill, I think we could do a lot. But is there that group of people? Because it puts you out there. And this is not an easy topic to be put out on. I mean, as people, I know every member of this board is politically active. We all get criticism. We all sometimes engage in some conflict. It's not always comfortable to do. It's not always comfortable to run for office. It's not always comfortable to stand up in public and say what you believe in. This is an area where it's the hardest ever. And for a town like this, it's even harder for whatever reason. And I respect anyone who's willing to do it and to have the thick armor it takes. And I'm just sort of asking, are there enough people who are willing to do that? To make a commission that would go out there and sort of gather the energy to be a better town, to make us a better town.
I mean, I guess I would say I would hope so. I think that we have current members who have committed to continuing on, maybe not all the members, and hopefully there's some fresh blood. I will say that, there's been conversations amongst members that even if the commission doesn't continue forward, that we are going to proceed, and there may be nonprofits being created in town, or we will be joining forces with other nonprofits that are serving regionally, because this is an important issue and we cannot be silent on the issue because silence is compliance. And so I do think that there is a small group of, people who would be passionate about this. And I think that if you engage in those conversations that this commission is suggesting and engage in those training environments, that more people will come to see how many people have been affected by some of these issues in town, that it isn't just about race, it isn't just about gender, it covers the gamut of identities, and that it should be an important issue in town. So I can't say that I've pulled to see how many people would be on this permanent commission if one does exist, but my hope is that we would be able to get a solid enough commission of 4 members to move forward.
That's very hopeful to hear.
Board members, if I can keep going, Mike Armada, do you have questions?
No, I don't have any questions this time. I will put some time in between now and our next meeting and go through the report completely and try and digest it all. And I may have some questions then, but as of right now, it's a large report. It's a lot of information in it, and I want to spend some time looking at it.
I mean, I read
But-
and listened to your presentation. Still have to go back. I
Yep.
mean,
There's a lot to absorb.
there's a lot there. But can I just, one comment?
What?
This was something that, a little thing that you came up for Adam and said, you know what? We're talking about items that, Bill, the study was on Bolton, but it's not a Bolton issue. I mean, it is a regional issue. And what happens here happens in Andover, happens in Coventry, Glastonbury. It is a regional issue. And maybe I'm thinking too wide.
National issue.
No, yeah, it is, but forget the national issue. I mean, I don't even want to go there. That's like, spitting into the wind in a hurricane and expecting it not to come back at you. But you thought about a group that's more regional. Quite frankly, if, we see commissions come and go. I've been in this a long time. And a lot of reports come and go. What do most reports end up? Shelved, I mean, quite frankly. And there's issues here that are brought up that I think are, if they're going to be successfully dealt with, I think have to be dealt more than just here. Have to be, if the thought of forming a group that extends beyond this town, maybe a couple of towns where, because what's the difference between here and Andover as far as now population? It's a tweak difference. Here in Coventry, or a town like that, and I don't know.
I mean, our residents don't live in Coventry or Andover, and their experiences, while they may have experiences there, that could be similar or different to the experiences they have here. We can only control
Yeah.
what happens here. And I would say that that report will sit on the shelf and nothing will get done if a permanent commission is not created to monitor and put plans in place to ensure that that is not the sole purpose of the survey.
Or
But,
there's more than one way of doing that. I mean, it can be a part of, instead of a standalone commission, be a part of something else that is that will be always contributed.
you know, one of the things that I recognized from this that jumped right out at me, and that was people of non-Christian religions. Well, one of the things we do not have is a synagogue. There is one in Manchester, and there's this very small one in Hebron that services some of our people who have interest to belong. We do not have a mosque. We do not have a spot for B'nai B'rith. I mean, there are many religions that are not served in a town that is under 5,000. It hasn't had enough of a population to create a congregation, and that's just on the religious aspect. It's a very interesting, and I think there's a lot more to digest in this to bring a lot of those pieces together. Paul,
In response to the other,
I'm sorry.
in response to Ed's question
Thank you.
before about, one of the things we talked about were some activities that we could do. And it was interesting because we were sort of all over the place because we had so many things that we thought needed to be addressed, or what would people actually participate in, and would it only be people that already knew that they're, you know, that they had some learning to do, but how do you get to people that are reluctant? So we had a whole lot of conversation about that. I think the purpose of the commission, though, after you guys look at the report and identify what goals you want us to address first, instead of tackling the whole problem, it's more like a marathon. And then if you tell us what you think we need to focus on, that commission then would be responsible for creating activities that would focus on those smaller goals first. And if it would be appropriate, we might collaborate with a different town here and there if their goals are the same, or for that activity would be the same, to get a wider. But really, you want to know what you would want for this town. What are your goals for this town to move forward? And it would be our responsibility, or the commission's responsibility, to take your direction and create those activities or whatever. So yes, maybe it would be in collaboration with this town for this, or that town for that, or something else. But automatically collaborating with another town wouldn't necessarily mean that the goals are the same. They'd just be activities that we. So that's where, once you guys decide what you would want, if that's the direction you decide to go, then that would be deciding what would be the
but
next step.
your comment of those activities bringing others in goes back to the reflection on religion. When there are more numbers, then you can
Correct.
have more people to attend a specific event instead of it being isolated to just one town. So just very interesting thoughts as far as a commission versus nonprofits versus, so there's certainly a lot to digest. Mr. Moore, I think I interrupted you. Were you going to continue?
No,
Mr. DePietro, did you have comments you'd like to address or questions you'd like to bring up?
Too many to talk about.
Okay.
You can email me, Bob.
Too many. I have to write you.
I can't because the audio is difficult to hear on my computer, so I just want to make sure I hear it. So I'm good. Have a good evening, everyone.
thank you.
Thank you for coming and listening.
What I said was, I have so many feelings and so many comments. There's too much to talk about. My first reaction was, if we were to do this exact same survey 5 years from now, or even 10, regardless of what our hopes are, I bet you the results will be very similar, unfortunately. Plus, I want to say, I don't know anybody on the board who's had as much experience as I've had with this. Don't forget, I spent 10 years in Hartford teaching Black and Puerto Rican kids. So I personally feel that we have to work hard in the schools with what we can do at the lower education level to change anything that's going to be changed. I knew that from experience. I have a lot more I could say, but I will not take your time now.
I too taught in impoverished situations in the city and then rural poverty. And so I appreciate what you're saying, Bob. Have you finished, sir?
Yes.
Very good.
And
Mr. Moore?
I just want to mimic what Bob did. I did my start teaching, I thought, at the Arsenal School in Hartford. If any of you have ever been, it's gone. It was such a lousy building. It's demolished. And we all have exceedingly diverse backgrounds and whatever, even though we may not look like it. I mean, I'm just an old white guy here, but I gotta tell you, you know, I have as diverse a background as anyone in this room. So a lot of this stuff, I see it through different eyes than someone else might see it. And I'm not going to spend an hour and a half discussing it today, but you know, it just to put in perspective that we all look at this with slightly different eyes, so our conclusions may vary a bit. It's just, that's it. That's my comment. Thank you.
So at this point, John?
I'm sure the owl can find me. You know, as I said, 25 years with Bureau of Labor Statistics and also Office of Federal Contract Compliance. So I compiled all of the affirmative action data that's needed for affirmative action plans for federal contracts. So I got to see the detail on all the different towns, and it's an interesting process. And I know the problems that the affirmative action officers have, and I finally recall the first time Ellen McDermott called me and asked for information. We didn't know who each one was. So that was a nice thing to find out. But the thing that one of the main reasons I wanted to join this group was Billie Holiday's song "Strange Fruit." We don't need any more lynchings. We don't need any more murders. One of the guys I went to college with, we both majored in poli-sci at Central Connecticut State. He was, I read several classes, and he was like Tom Mann. That's the best way I could describe him. He was like Tom Mann in a lot of ways.
And how does this wrap in, Bob? Tom?
He was found murdered by a gay bar in Hartford. I mean, I knew he was gay, but that's the kind of thing that we need to stop. You know, it's bad enough to get wedgies and whirlies in the toilet and getting beat, thrown into lockers, which I'm pretty sure still happens. But it's the murders that has to stop, and people have to know that all these groups exist in their own towns, and they, you know, there's people. It's just amazing. We can't keep going like this.
Thank you.
Want it to be people to be a little more protected.
Understood. Thank you. Cool.
Let's say one
Sure.
thing that's germane to the topic. So the commission itself, hopefully, praying that who gets charged to continue. We have a lot of ideas that are hanging up because we only have a year. And our focus was the report that's in front of me. So I would strongly ask to the board of selectmen to review this report, you know, take it seriously. And it's a report that I think you would only see truly if it was done by a professional consultant agency. I mean, there's a lot of time. I've heard a lot of two-way back and forth discussion that the committee undertook to get this final report. So that's all I'll say. Thank you.
Thank you.
At this time, I would like to ask the chair, you are still in need of more time to get the youth survey completed as well. That's correct?
Correct.
And your finite date of the year was November
Correct.
2021, so November 2022. So you need the board this evening.
We have one meeting left
How
in
many
October.
to complete this, just to get us, because we are not
It won't
at
be
a
that,
position to really address this document of this magnitude this evening. How many months would you like, do you believe you would need, now including, I'm gonna be fair about this, holidays coming up and that type of year, to complete the second portion of your survey?
Well, the next part is to be more about the analysis of the second one. That's what I think is going to take longer in the discussion of what it's telling us. You know, looking at the different pieces. Now, for me, that being is difficult because there's only 48 people. So that probably will go faster than this last one did.
I'm sorry,
I'm sorry, I keep forgetting. I'm so used to wearing it now.
I know, but just with distance, it's a little hard.
So it's more about like, so now getting the data and writing the report, I think is the part that I'm trying to get to.
Would you like, you think 2 months, 3 months? What is to give you that time to get you past this? And you could
I'd
come
say
back to
given-
another, you
given
could
the
ask another
season-
extension.
Given the season and everything that we're involved in, I'd say coming back to the board in February may be reasonable with the
I
final
was thinking
report
that
on
too.
I think so.
So
So
November, December, January, February.
Yeah,
so
read the
3 to
February
4 months,
meeting,
yeah.
so I would ask the board, is there concurrence? And then we'll go for a motion to extend. Is there concurrence with the board? Are there comments you'd like to make on a extension till February? Bob DePietro, you're shaking your head. Yes? You have a comfort level with that? Mike Aramita, do you have a comfort? Adam?
yeah, I do, but I kind of want to focus our attention that we should have on our agenda in the meeting in February, the proposal for a permanent commission of some sort of permanent entity to address these issues and some kind of discussion of a mission statement for that entity to decide what our next step is, because I feel like confronted with kind of information that's in a report like this, you can't just sort of sit on your hands and say, at some point we'll do something. You have to keep some pressure on yourselves and on the community for action and improvement. And it's not to say, I think this is important, that it's not to say that there's something, deeply wrong with Bolton or that it's a terrible place, but that every community should examine itself in this environment regularly for these issues, because we do not do a good job with them. That is, to the extent that there are people who feel unwelcome and unheard in a community of this size that prides itself on being a community of neighbors and neighborly, decent people, that is a community, which I truly believe it to be, you can be two things at once. You can be a good community, you can be a community of good people who want to do well and still leave people behind. And if you don't ask yourself, am I doing everything to be the best community that I can be or that we can be, then you're not doing your job. You're not living up to the goals that we share.
I appreciate what you said, and I don't know that February will be the meeting because we won't have seen the youth portion of it, which could flavor a whole separate view of direction that we feel is as important, more important, less important. So I think there's a weight that we'd have to give to the two pieces as we look at them, and the recommendations, I presume with summary and analysis that will come with that also, and sharing it with the Board of Education and others. So I will certainly
So,
appreciate what you said, Adam.
yeah, I'm gonna listen, I just want to,
Make a motion?
yes, simple. move to extend the commission's deadline to the board's February meeting. I don't have a day on that, but
Their deadline and their terms, because their terms expired.
expires at that time and then
Deadline in their terms.
in their terms. At that
Okay.
time, if, you know, if things aren't done and everything, board can then extend again. I mean, it's, you know, I don't want to put unfair pressure or burden on you, but trying to put a realistic number.
Give
So
you,
that,
we want to give you some elbow room.
yeah, and also give us some, you know, there's a lot here. I mean, God bless you for doing it. The amount of time that you put in there is quite incredible, and it's very comprehensive. And you read it, and then you have to read it again. You have to read it.
So that you,
And I'm a slow reader, so.
at this point, I need us, we have a motion.
Bob's motion to extend the terms.
Thank you.
of the commission members and their deadline for a final report to our February 2023 meeting.
And is there another board member that would like to comment on it? Bob DiPietro, you're all set? Okay, then I will call for a vote at this time to extend it to February and the terms as well through to February, the Board of Selectmen's meeting. We look forward to hearing back from them, and that, at which point we can make further plans. How's that? Very good. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And it passes unanimously. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for staying so long this evening. I'm going to continue on because of the late hour. Properties and facilities report. The trail.
Yeah.
Thank you. Trail cam. So we have an issue before us that's been brought before us. There has been some property changes and mischief, perhaps is a good word for it, made at Freya Park with people going in, creating bike paths for bicycle, off-road bicycling, and creating jumps and that kind of stuff, as well as marking trees. And we do not have the police force. We don't have a conservation officer that we can call upon, and it's not the property of the DEEP to be able to do that. So the Conservation Commission has asked, would the board approve them putting a trail cam up there to see what they see at the park? I have comfort level with it, but I wanted to go back to the board and get your approval.
Is it a trail cam that they already have?
They've appropriated funds out of their normal budget to purchase something.
Okay.
It's not a new expenditure. It's a new expenditure of monies that they already have.
Okay.
Will there be a notice during the park that they're under surveillance and perhaps be maybe recorded?
You should.
That's a good point.
I don't know that it's.
Well, if you put a trail cam up, you're doing it for animals. If a human happened to go by, they're gonna be.
Normally.
A place where they might not be expected to be recorded.
I've had some discussion with Mr. Parley about that. And again, I just, I wanted to bring it to the full board for the discussion.
Footage. I'm sorry, but I'm not on board with private people having access to footage that they post, that they have available because they were allowed to put a camera up at a public park.
So
If that's done by the town and the town has control of the footage, that's one thing.
this is a commission appointed by this board. So private,
Yeah, but they're volunteers, they're not town employees, they're not trained. And who's gonna maintain the footage? Where's it gonna be? Is it gonna be accessible on the internet? I mean, there are lots of ways in which that could go very wrong. It's not it's an unwise I can just think of 5, right, as I'm sitting here.
You
You
mentioned
have
three.
your 2-year-old, your 2-year-old has to go to the bathroom,
You're right.
and they're on the trail camera.
I don't know of what he speaks. I have 2,
Mine, the 2-year-old, how about the mom?
That too.
or the dad.
Mm.
That's so bad, the dad just turned around.
If he knows where the camera is.
Cameras. That's my concern, without getting too graphic. So this is not a day and age. I mean, it's fine if you're a private person and you take a video in a public place, then you're responsible for what you do with that video. But as the town, I do not want to be responsible for potentially putting up somebody's 2-year-old on a video that might then be acceptable. So unless that's going to be monitored by somebody who's trained to do that, and then going to have very strict rules as to where that footage is going to go and who's it's going to be displayed to, that's a hard no for me. Sorry.
Please don't apologize. It's a valid point.
No, those are valid points, and,
Nothing to
and,
apologize for.
if Mr. Parley.
Too
can-
much on the
can
internet,
answer- No, no,
as I'm concerned.
if Mr. Parley can answer those questions and provide some data, then we can consider it, but you make a valid point.
Anybody who wants to do that as a private person and fly a drone over every once in a while to see what's going on and then report it to the state police,
I can.
they're welcome to do so.
And
Would you,
I don't think we need a motion, but
no, but hang on.
Carefully quiet.
Well, I'm, let me bring this question around to you then. Would you, would the board like to have the Conservation Commission come before us and make a presentation on their thoughts on a trail camp?
no.
Mike Aramita has a no.
No.
And Bob Peters a no. Okay, I asked. Chris. At this point, is it a consensus of the board that there will be no trail cams put out by the Conservation Commission on the town park property
Yes.
At this time.
at this time? Thank you. And would you please get back to Mr. Parley if the board says different?
Thank you guys for discussing it.
Other properties and facilities report, Mr. Moore, do you have anything?
I'm sorry.
Very good. Then let's move on to 5C, the 2022 budget report.
So in your package, we have the information from the tax collector. You know, we are on target with collections. You know, she always does an extraordinary job, and it shows, it reflects that once again in her reports. And then, you know, with the regular standing of where we are with the budget for ending on September 30th, 2022. The only line item that we have highlighted for you is with elections. You know, we knew that we would be spending quite a bit more money this year. The board addressed it when they created the budget and approved the budget last year. And we're watching this line item. You know, we know that we'll have more expenses coming up in November, you know, because we had more than one referendum vote. And we have the elections coming up in November with 2 separate polling places. You know, we expected some of that, but it is a current anomaly that shows in the current budget. Any questions on that piece of it?
Hearing none? Adam, do we move?
Yeah, go ahead.
If there's no questions on the budget report, we do not need to accept this budget report.
Well, you don't have to
I
act
understand.
on it.
Then we'll just check that off and we'll move on to D, consider and act on the AP report and budget transfers. Are there questions for Jim on any of the transfers or anything within the AP report?
The transfers we do have to deal with separately, but
I was going to take the questions all at once.
okay.
Oh,
But if you'd like to do one at a time, I'm flexible.
I'll make the motion. We approve the AP report.
I'll second that motion.
Motion made and seconded. Further questions?
Clarify on the first budget transfer, it's not from the
Yes.
That's why you see the arrow.
Just wanted to verbalize that. so it's in
Thank
the
you.
record somewhere.
That'll be the second part of the motion to approve that, and we'll bring that out a second time. Thank you, Adam.
Otherwise, we have a motion on the report.
Correct.
I'm fine with that.
You good? Bob DiPietro, are you all comfortable with what you see? That this time I'll ask for a roll call vote. Bob DiPietro's a yes.
Yes,
Armita's a yes. Keller's a yes. Moore is a yes. And Pam Sawyer is a yes. So we have unanimous. Thank you very much. And now we'll move on to Adam's arrows. Just
Okay.
to show people it's sort of
Right.
fun at the top of the page. There's a little arrow that shows it. Whoops. Well,
Just
whoops.
wanted to make sure.
So we actually, this transfer actually ended up not needing to happen. And so Jill believes that the appropriate action here, since this was passed by an action of the Board of Selectmen, that it should be undone by an action of the Board of Selectmen.
Yeah,
why does it need to
Thank
be
you.
dealt
I
with at all?
appreciate that comment, because I concur 100%.
Mr. Armita?
Why do we have to take any action at all? The budget year's ended. The auditor will see where the money went from and to, and will understand, hopefully, that it wasn't spent because it wasn't needed. And everything just stays the way it is right now. I think it's a waste of, I know it only takes, I'm spending more time on it than it'll take to vote on it. But I think our finance director is crazy on this one. This is a needless thing. It can stay right where it is, and the auditor knows where the money is because he just follows the paper trail. This is a ridiculous move.
Well, right, it's returned, right? Because it's returned because it wasn't spent.
It was never moved.
Oh, it's never moved.
But it was moved on paper, but it was never actually moved.
Well,
But never spent, but who cares where it ends up at the end of the year? It's a ridiculous thing to even mess with. You know, when I was doing this
Returned.
with a relatively large budget in my previous job, you know, when I made transfers at the end of the year and I didn't spend all that money, I never put the money back into the original accounts. It just sat there and the auditor took care of it. And
Then I would
just-
entertain, because I can count the votes from what I just heard, I would take
50. One that we do want.
the payroll category professional education training. I would entertain a motion to approve that budget transfer.
So moved.
Second,
Seconded by Mr. Teller. At this point, is there any discussion on that particular transfer? I will take a vote then. All in favor, say aye.
All right.
I
Passes unanimously, and the other one is tabled. Thank you. Report and update. I'm going to put this in your lap, Jim, for the meeting between Gwen Marion and Mr. Joe Dillon, our town engineer.
Well, it was not just with Joe Dillon, it was also with the owner of Bolton Collision. And we met on site there and discussed with him and his wife what our thoughts were about creating a parking area there. They expressed some concerns as to how that was going to affect their ability to conduct business. We put some ideas out there about how we might be able to mitigate some of those circumstances. We asked them to think about it. We left them with a map. And we do intend to have a second meeting with them so that we can try to work this out and potentially move a project forward with regard to doing that with grant funds that Gwen thinks we might be able to be successful in getting for that purpose.
Are there any questions for Jim? Hearing none. Thank you, Jim. Appreciate it. And Gwen's effort on this. And there'll be more to come, I'm sure, on this particular thing. Question. So we are going down to now 6B, the update on the steep grant award.
So I think all of you are aware that we did receive an affirmative response, a delayed but affirmative response to our steep grant application. You know, as much as it's something that's not going to show, you know, when we put in a septic system, but I think it's really, as I expressed before, I think it's a keystone project that really allows us to move forward with some of the things that we identified in the vibrant community study. And I think from that standpoint, here in the center of town, it's pretty exciting. Jeff Jacobson, who is Joe Dillon's boss, did actually, without even being asked, reached out to the state of Connecticut, recognizing that we've already spent a lot of money on this project over a number of years. If the monies that we had already spent could be considered as part of our match, and we got an affirmative response to that, which is really good news.
This-
We
the
have
sec-
spent
the-
significant amount in engineering to even lay this out and get it going.
The second piece of that is the town match, which is expected when these grants are given out oftentimes. And in this case, it's $125,000, I believe we put forward, but we are also allowed to put in-kind donation as going towards that. So if we had a town crew using town machinery to be able to do a certain test hole or something that would qualify, we could count that as well towards the 125, their hours and their. Any quick questions that board members would have? A quick old Bob DiPietro, sir.
I would like to see this project move forward as expeditiously as possible, as quickly as possible.
It will, Bob.
Well, okay.
It will. The next step for us is to receive basically a contract between us and the state of Connecticut. And once we have that, you know, that's our cue that we can really start to push the ball forward. Right now, we're kind of in a holding pattern waiting for that. But we'll continue to move the project forward as quickly as we can. We don't have a lot of engineering left to do on that, which is typically one of the slowest parts. You know, the next piece from the engineering perspective will be putting specifications together so that we can go out to bid for the project.
This is a little closer to shovel ready than a lot of the other things that
Yeah.
we've been working on, so we're pleased. Adam, did you have any further questions?
No.
Bob DiPietro,
And construction
your
on,
hand, excuse me, Mike Aramita, your hand is up. Did you have a
No,
question?
I'm good. I'm
Okay.
satisfied.
I'm trying to vote yes.
because of the nature of the project and that we're using grinder pumps, the construction is very quick and you can hardly see it. It's narrow trenches and it moves quickly. And this project, once it gets going, can get done quickly.
One of the things we will be considering are the wetlands and the sensitivity to the wetlands that are in the area. So just for everyone's comfort level. Thank you very much. There's no action needed on this. And thank you to Jim and others who made those calls because we were left behind by the state by an oops, and that's an honest mistake. So we'll go for that. And we thank them for their consideration, late consideration, and their review and the money to be granted.
And at first selectmen kind of beat on them just to make sure we got it.
Yeah.
Let's put that out there.
Thank you. New business. Before you this evening are the dates for 2023. Are there any questions on those?
Nope.
So I need a motion to accept those dates for 2023. Bob DiPietro, you want to make that motion?
Sure. I move that we accept the dates for 23 for meetings as presented.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Aramita, you want a second?
Yes, I do.
Any further questions?
Is there some reason we moved the August meeting to the second? Is there something?
I'm sure.
Be quiet, Adam, be quiet.
Sorry.
They don't know.
Never mind, I was trying to.
Okay. Sorry.
Kathy,
The
We all
first,
blend
must have a reason.
Kathy prepared it for us. I didn't have a strong hand in it, so I don't know the answer to your question.
I'm sure she has a reason, Jim.
It's probably your birthday.
Could be.
not mine, so we're
Nope,
good, we're
me
good to
neither,
go.
So we're good.
Nobody's wedding anniversary. It's very good. So with that question in mind, but not put forward, we have a motion before us. It's been seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
I,
Thank you. Passed unanimously. Proclamation for Larry Fiano. You may know that he's being honored this Friday. It is his 97th birthday. We have a proclamation before us. I will not read it because of the late hour, but it does discuss his attending a one-room schoolhouse, his military service, his family. It refers to the commissions and associations that he's been president of, his efforts in town as a volunteer firefighter a number of years ago, as well as the labor and efforts that he put forward in donation to the town of Bolton. And that he is on the Wall of Fame at the Bolton Public Schools. And so we are going to recognize him with an official proclamation with a seal on it. And I would ask the board members to please sign it. I need it for this Friday because I will be asked to present it, and all members of the board are asked to go. They would love to have as many as possible. So those that are not with us but here virtually, would you please be sure that we will get your signature on this particular document? Thank you very much.
Need a motion for the
Oh, I need a motion for that proclamation. Did you want me to read it out loud, guys?
That we authorize, or rather
proclamation.
we proclaim the status of Larry Fiano as presented in the draft proclamation.
second,
We also named October 7th as Larry Fiano Day in Bolton.
Oh, cool.
I amend my motion to include Larry Fiano.
Thank you. Second?
Yep.
Thank you, Ms. Aramita. Hearing no further discussion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. It passes unanimously. We thought that it'd be important for you to know that 7C is the diversity and inclusion training for the town employees that is planned.
Which happens to be biannual.
Yeah, it's biannual. Yeah,
And,
we've already been through it a couple of times.
I remember the person that's present that had the strongest positive reaction was Mike Aramita. He really, Mike, did you want to say anything about the last time we did this?
no, but it was a very enjoyable thing. I mean, we had a good time. We
Yeah.
actually did.
And my intent is to engage KJR Enterprises again. Since the overall reaction from those that participated was really, really positive.
Yeah.
But I'm also going to share a copy of the report that, the Diversity Commission has just put out with KJR. And our hope is to do that it's probably not going to happen in October. It's probably will happen in November or December. It will be mandatory for all of our employees who are at work that day. And it will be, put out there so that, all of our board and commission members can participate. Because I think it really is, really is important. And it's one of those things that we can do. And we should do, and we'll continue to do.
And it wasn't a painful thing at all.
No, it really was very enjoyable.
Jim, is a motion needed by this board for you to proceed?
Nope.
It's just
Nope, all set.
administrative.
It's information really for you guys.
I mean, that's very good. Then I'll move on to number 8, COVID-19 report. So we have quite a bit of COVID exposure going on. I've heard from members of the town staff that have in the past, I'd say 6 weeks, had COVID of Omicron, lesser variety less severe than the Delta. I have heard from the churches two of them that have had quite a lot of exposure in the parishes. So there is certainly a lot of it happening, but it seems not to incur hospitalizations because of numerous reasons. And so we're pleased about that. Moving on to B, 3 board meeting, October 18th. It's a Tuesday. I'd like to ask some of those that have been before the 3 board meetings, just give a brief overview, Mr. Aramita or Mr. Mora or Mr. DePietro.
Well, it's basically an open discussion between the 3 boards of upcoming year of concerns, issues, and projects where we might hopefully be able to work together. That's a pretty extensive nutshell. Those are the issues that we basically have going on. And generally, there's 1 or 2, but it ends up 1 or 2 really particular issues that we can all agree on and go forward with. Hopefully.
So, Bob DePietro, do you have a comment? Mr. Aramita, do you have a comment on how it's been handled in the past?
No, Bob summed it up. It's a brainstorming session in some respects. We throw things on the table and some of them take off and some of them just die right there on the table. But it's a good discussion where everybody gets to talk about the things that are important to them. And it's been very valuable in the past.
Very good. It is at 7 p.m., I believe,
I believe.
and it will be a hybrid meeting,
Yes,
and it's for all members
correct.
of each of the boards. And so we have one of the newest members of the Board of Finance here who would like to ask a question of the Board of Selectmen. Ma'am?
Yeah, I just wanted to say.
Amanda?
That it's the same night as the diversity commission meeting at the same exact time, so I will not repeat it.
Sorry.
Understood. So are there is there anything that this board would like to bring up at this point that we should think about before the meeting on the 18th? Now, we are mandated to have this by charter, so this is not something new that we came up with.
Could we just, is there any summary given out to the 3 boards about things like when bonds are retiring, what projects are being, what CAPA projects are being actively worked on, anything like that? It would be helpful.
I don't know that it has happened as part of this meeting in the past. We did, I'm pretty sure it was during budget season last year, we talked about the bonds. We had, I think, a 1-page report. We can certainly, because I think one of the, large topics is going to be capital projects.
Bond retirement is probably the key.
So I know that, the school has specifically asked that, we put the air conditioning and roofing project on the agenda for the 3 board meeting to discuss.
I would like to see the 3 boards be generally aware of what our bonding and debt situation is and where where it goes up and down over the years and where the projects are sort of where the hot projects are. If we've got things on the capital list that we've identified, which ones are active, which ones are actively being worked on, which ones are just sort of sitting there.
Okay.
Very
Because
good
that
point.
helps us prioritize into the future instead of just sort of reacting. That's something I've had a hard time getting a handle on for myself, and I see Amanda nodding her head. So I kind of want to know what we can expect
Where the position is.
over the next few years.
Well, yeah, where the bonds are and where the retirements are the driving force of what you can do and when you can do it.
Well, in other circumstances, in other years, in other times that were better financial times, the town was able to take on more debt and more, and we know where we are at this point
Oh,
from what we experienced this last year.
what you have space for, then you know what you can take on.
Thank you. Well put. All right, thank you very much. And we don't need to make a motion to go to that meeting.
Nope.
So we're going to move on to the administrator's report. Could you just summarize 3 or 4 things? Mr.
Sure. Well, I think,
Because
you
it's
know,
in your board, it's in your packet, everybody.
and I got it to you early this time.
You did a good job.
I think one of the, biggest things is that our new shared assessor started in Bolton today. Her name is Kara Fishman. She comes to us from the town of Ashford, is a certified assessor, has been for many years. I think this has been something that the Board of Selectmen has talked about for a number of years. And we actually managed to get that accomplished. She is overlapping with Helen for the month of October. And I just also want to take the moment just to recognize, the service that Helen has given to the town of Bolton and her flexibility. She's known that we've been looking forward to doing this for a couple of years now, and has just said, I'm here as long as you need me. I'll do whatever you need me to do. And, she has maintained that attitude all along. And I really just want the board to understand how much, she's done for the town in a little bit of time that she has here every week. And our experience with her has been, very, very positive. But the fact that we will have an assessor that is in town hall 2 days a week, is accessible to the public on more than just by appointment basis, and, on a Tuesday evening, I think is an extraordinary move for us. And it's a true shared position with the town of Wellington. They will be paying half of the cost of her salary and benefits. So it's a very exciting thing. And we're really pleased to have her on board.
Can I ask a quick question just on that? You say she's 2 days? Is she 2.5 days with us and 2.5 days with us?
So she's 37 hours. She'll be 2 long days here, 2 long days in Wellington. She is used to a 4-day work week. The town of Ashford has long had Thursdays off, and her life schedule is built around having Thursdays off. Yet Thursdays was go to market day for the farmers.
That's an Eastern Connecticut town for you.
And it's never changed. The town staff have been asked if they've been polled if they want to take Fridays or Mondays off instead, and they are used to Thursdays. So Thursdays it will be.
When they take a personal day, they take.
Right.
Thursdays used to be when nature.
They take a Friday, they got a 4-day
Very
week.
good.
Yeah.
Is there something else you'd like to bring up, Jim?
For me, that was the most important thing. Is there any questions?
Yeah, just the one about the cybersecurity contract. Have we vetted them as a vendor? Do we have a contract?
So we have vetted them. They provided a lot more information. We're very pleased with that information. I don't want, in one of the specific questions that I think it was you that had, Adam, was, if they're in the middle of doing a project for us, and, their team member, somebody on their key point, they are always reporting and having backup with their team. We asked them specifically if they were if they were able to undertake our project. And they said, absolutely, when we schedule your project with you, it will be by, mutual consent as to when it gets scheduled. But when we schedule your project, we will be focused on your project. And so we're pretty happy. We have another meeting scheduled with them, and we're looking to execute a contract so we can at least begin phase 1 and phase 2 of the cybersecurity enhancements that we're looking at there.
On our side, do we have to designate somebody?
So we also met with CREC, which currently provides our IT service. And so my office will be Kathy and I. Graham from CREC is assigned to us. And the senior team at Crack will also be a part of this. So, because there's things that they're gonna have to do to interface with Novus in order to make all of this happen.
Try to get them to identify somebody in particular, because what happens with those kinds of deals is because of that dedication on the vendor end, they'll say, you know, we are giving you certain information we need from you to start the project. And if you don't give it to us on time, then they don't have an obligation.
They can't move forward.
To move forward on time, and then all the deadlines go.
Yeah.
So not that that's my suspicion, but if CREC is the one that's giving them the information about our current system, we want to know who at CREC is going to be responsible to know that and fill out that, because it's usually a form.
Yeah.
Or a set of forms with, you know, this password, that password, this technical specification.
Yep.
And it has to go to their engineers by a certain time, otherwise they can't turn the key. And if you're stopping everything to move one system over to another, you can't like, oh, we're not going to do that today.
Right.
Because we didn't meet their deadline.
You don't have the continuity.
Then
that
everybody
you
sits
need.
and twiddles their thumbs until it happens.
Yep.
So you've got to make sure that somebody's responsible.
That makes very good sense. Thank you.
Can I just go back for one part?
Didn't mean to hijack.
Oh, that's okay.
That's all right. Just for Yvonne, Kara Fishman, it's C-A-R-A or? okay,
AARA,
Thank you. And Fishman, F-I-S-H,
MAN.
man. Very good. And
Pam?
one,
Excuse me, I'm going to step away from the meeting for a few minutes. I'll be back.
very good. Thank you. We have, we're looking at pricing for the municipal solid waste as the time is ticking towards our contract. Did you just want to highlight any of that?
So we've gotten two prices back on the municipal solid waste disposal. We've gotten one from All American Waste. We've gotten one from Casella. We are currently soliciting from Wheelabrator and Covanta.
Very good. Thank you.
We're gonna
Mr.
be
Moore?
going in executive session, so can we take a 2-minute break?
At this point, where we will,
I do have one other, but we can take a 2-minute break.
Thank you. Kidney was
Now
screaming.
that we drove out.
could you please push mute? We'll be back in I'd like to call the meeting back to order for just a minute before we go into executive session. Jim?
So my other is we would like to hold the next AP meeting on Tuesday, October 18th at 6:30, just prior to the 3-board meeting. Do we have consensus that the time and date would be acceptable?
At this point, I don't know that Mr. Aramita is back with us. Could I please ask that you make sure that he is notified?
Yep. Bob, did you give us a nod?
Yeah.
Okay. And this is not necessarily for the entire board, but for those who are on the CAPA committee or those who may be interested in coming, we do need to have our first meeting by on or before November 18th, which is 30 days from the October 3-board meeting. And the dates that Kathy looked at and suggested would be November 10th, November 15th, or November 16th. The 15th is a Tuesday. If you like Tuesdays, Thursday, the 10th is a Thursday. And the 16th is a Wednesday.
Oh, 15 and 16 are both good.
For the times, Jim.
It's usually 7 o'clock.
That's it. The 15th is Tuesday, 16th is Wednesday, right?
Yes.
What's your pleasure?
I wasn't probably
Which-
going to extend, but
It's you, Bob, and Carl,
It's me and Carl.
and anybody else who chooses to attend the public meeting.
Try to, you gotta give me credit.
All right.
I just couldn't take another reading,
I understood.
especially the week before I started.
Whichever one works best. Jim, whichever works best with, for me, either the 15th or
Yeah,
16th.
these didn't have conflicts with anything that we could find scheduled in the book.
Okay. And not doing it on a Thursday eliminates any Board of Ed meeting.
Okay.
So that's why I thought maybe
15th is a Tuesday.
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 Let's aim for that and then,
Okay. And the second choice would be a Wednesday.
Would be the 16th, yeah. The backup.
Okay, that's very helpful. I have fulfilled my duty to Kathy.
and you said 7,
7. Yep.
not 7:30.
And it'll, we'll make, as we will with all of our meetings, we'll make it hybrid.
We're good. Thank you very much. Is that complete what you're,
That was my other, yes.
Good, Mike.
I'm back.
hi, Mike. So Mike, we have put together an AP meeting.
Oh, okay.
On the 18th at 6:30 before the 3-board meeting.
18th, 6:30.
And so it's 7 of that same day as the 3-board meeting.
Okay.
Very good. Just want to make sure you were included.
Yep. Thank you.
So at this point, I would consider a motion before us for executive session to discuss 2 items. Item number 1, discussion on personnel evaluation of our interim administrative officer. Number 2, the cybersecurity discussion.
So moved to include the administrative. To include Jim.
To include Jim in the meeting.
Yes.
Thank you. Is there a second? Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Right.
It passes unanimously. Thank you to all that are listening.